It's 8:17 a.m. here in the French capital. A reminder now of our top stories today. AstraZeneca needs to catch up on its promised deliveries of vaccines to the European Union. That warning from the EU Commission President coming as the bloc moves to halt exports of COVID jabs in a bid to ramp up the EU's inoculation programme. US President Joe Biden uses his first press conference to champion the country's COVID vaccination rollout, while promising transparency over his handling of the growing migrant crisis on the Mexican border. And the most expensive traffic jam in the world could continue for weeks. That according to the company charged with dislodging the vast container ship that's been blocking the Suez Canal since Tuesday. And the foreign ministers of France, Italy and Germany urge fighters from outside Libya to leave the country immediately as they hold meetings in Tripoli in support of Libya's new transitional government. Well, it's time now for business, and for that I'm joined in the studio by Yuka Royer. Yuka, the Suez blockage still has no end in sight, and its potential impact on the global economy just keeps growing.
That's right. Well, Egyptian authorities have now formally closed the Suez Canal, but the backlog of ships lining up to get through keeps piling up. So even if the Evergreen were dislodged today, it would still take days to clear all those vessels. And experts are saying that it could be weeks before the mega container is freed. The canal is the fastest shipping lane linking Europe and Asia, and about 12% of global trade and roughly 10% of oil and gas go through it. Some containers have already switched to taking the longer route around the African continent and the Atlantic, which will add both time and cost to the transportation and might even drive up inflation eventually, according to some economists. One expert says shipping brings 90% of everything to us and price hikes are inevitable. Let's take a listen.
It's an absolutely essential part of our modern life, and this webcam would not have reached me without modern shipping, and this computer and pretty much everything on my desk. It's already pretty cheap to ship a t-shirt or anything, depending on how the industry is doing and the price of containers. I know that they have risen considerably in the last year throughout the pandemic, but it's inevitable there's going to be some knock-on cost effects.
And Yuka, this blockage has unsurprisingly ramped up volatility in the oil market.
Well, oil prices retreated on Thursday with a stronger dollar after rising 6% on Wednesday. But on the whole, the oil market's reaction has been quite muted after this blockage started because demand has already been low due to the pandemic. As for the financial markets, shares are higher across Asia this Friday, taking a cue from Wall Street on renewed optimism over a post-pandemic economic recovery, as you can see in the green, or in the blue rather here, across the board.
Now, Yuka, the pandemic, as we know, has disproportionately affected the most vulnerable in society. A new United Nations report calling for more cash injections into the world's poorest economies.
Well, that report, called the Financing for Sustainable Development report, points to an estimated 114 million jobs lost during the pandemic and poorer nations struggling with rising debt. More than 60 international agencies are now calling for immediate financing and debt relief to put developing economies back on track, including the allocation of the so-called special drawing rights, an international monetary fund tool that can help countries pay off foreign debt more easily. Half the least developed countries already faced a high risk of debt distress before the pandemic, and the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated that. Here's the UN's Deputy Secretary General speaking earlier.
The pandemic has caused the worst recession in 90 years and disproportionately affected the most vulnerable segments of our societies, including women and youth. We're seeing between 119 and 124 million people estimated to be the newly pushed into extreme poverty, and the world has lost the equivalent of 255 million full-time jobs.
And Yuka, richer countries are also seeing their debt levels soar.
Well, as expected, governments around the world have injected a lot of cash into their economies to help businesses that had to close, like restaurants, as well as to encourage companies to keep their employees on payroll. Here in France, new official data show public debt rose to about 116% of GDP last year and deficit widening to 9.2%. The statistics agency INSEE says that it's the highest level seen since 1949. The government's debt stands at over 2.6 trillion euros and deficit at 211 billion euros. The figures, though, are still lower than previously expected.
Meanwhile, Yuka, in the United States, as US President Joe Biden increased his vaccination target from 100 to 200 million shots in his first 100 days in office. Some companies are looking to the vaccine to their advantage.
As a business opportunity, well, some companies are offering promotions to people who have received their shots in a bid to attract customers. One such company is donut chain Krispy Kreme, as Claire Rusher reports. They've started a pretty sweet deal, although not everyone's impressed.
Get your jab, then grab a donut. Krispy Kreme's new promotion offering a free donut to those who have been vaccinated is winning over these customers.
I got vaccinated today, actually, and I came straight to Krispy Kreme after I heard the news.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, Krispy Kremes are delicious.
Those far down on the vaccination list have no need to worry. The deal will be in place for the rest of the year.
We didn't want anyone to feel left out, and we know some people are not eligible to get the vaccine yet, including myself and a lot of folks. And so we wanted to make sure there's plenty of time for them to enjoy a free donut on us whenever vaccines became available in their area.
Attracting customers by awarding them for getting vaccinated. A new marketing strategy also being deployed by Drop. Starting in April, the e-commerce rewards startup will give users $50 in points if they share vaccination selfies with the hashtag #DropCovid and tag the company. However, such promotions aren't a national trend just yet, although some companies have launched initiatives linked to the rollout more generally. Uber, for example, announced last year it would provide 10 million free or discounted rides to vaccination appointments. Some analysts warn such operations could actually hurt firms if it looks like they're trying to make a profit off of a public health crisis. But after a year of closures and losses due to the pandemic, companies are hoping to bring customers back any way they can.
So turning the crisis into opportunities for some businesses.
Although possibly not good for the country's obesity epidemic. Yuka Royo with a look through the day's top stories in business. Thank you very much.